Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at what happens when a global faith meets the ruthless mechanics of the Fortune 500. We are cracking open the books on Ensign Peak Advisors, or EPA. That's the highly secretive investment arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And we are not talking about a modest endowment here, not by a long shot. We're diving into a financial behemoth. Our sources, they show the latest federal filings, this is from Q3 2025, that EPA's portfolio just hit a record high.
A record high. What are we talking number-wise?
$60.9 billion. That's in assets under management, or AUM, and it's spread across roughly 1,700 different stock positions.
So $60.9 billion, that number is just stunning on its own. But we have to stress, for you listening, that is just the visible part, right? The fraction of the total wealth.
That is the essential context, yes. That's $60.9 billion. That's only what they have to disclose to the SEC. It's their publicly traded U.S. stock portfolio. When you zoom out, you look at the whole picture. External estimates put the church's total investment wealth closer to $206 billion.
$200 billion.
As of 2024, yeah. And their overall wealth, property, businesses, everything is probably nearing $300 billion. It's a financial ecosystem that, few nonprofits or even some countries can really rival.
Okay, let's unpack the $60.9 billion part first, because the growth is, well, it's almost unbelievable. This fund has officially doubled in value in just 5 years. It was at $29.8 billion during that COVID dip in early 2020. That is just explosive.
It is. And the scale of it all really puts those returns in perspective. As I saw a great analogy for this. $60.9 billion is like having enough money to spend $1 million every single day for 167 years.
$1 million a day for over a century and a half.
Right. The interest alone generated by that kind of capital is staggering. It almost makes new income irrelevant.
I'm curious how they're pulling off that kind of growth. You'd think a religious charities fund would be full of, I don't know, safe, stable bonds. But to double your money like that, they must be taking some serious risks. What's the portfolio actually made of?
It tells us they're aggressive and very, very professional. If you break it down by sector, technology is the clear winner. It just dominates the portfolio at over 31%.
31% in tech.
Yeah. After that, you have financials at nearly 14% and healthcare around 11.5%. This tech focus is exactly why they've seen such rapid growth. Historically, the fund's been growing by about 7% a year.
And when we say tech bets, we're talking about maximum conviction. They're not just, dipping their toes in. They are heavily tilted toward the biggest names out there, what everyone calls the Magnificent Seven.
That's absolutely right. Their top holding today is Nvidia, the leader, the undisputed leader in the whole AI boom.
And how much Nvidia are we talking about?
Ensign Peak holds nearly $4.5 billion worth of Nvidia shares.
4.5 billion in one stock.
Yes. To hold that much in such a volatile, high-growth stock, that's a massive conviction bet.
But if this is a rainy day fund, as they claim, why put that much money into arguably the riskiest, hottest stock on the market? Isn't that the opposite of, being prudent?
That is the core question critics are asking. And it really highlights how sophisticated this fund is. They are not just storing money, they're actively hunting for returns. Beyond Nvidia, they have over $3 billion each in Microsoft and Apple. And outside of pure tech, they have huge positions in JP Morgan Chase and MasterCard. This is a top-tier fund aiming to beat the market.
But there are strict ethical guardrails here, too, aren't there? This is a faith-based group. They have to follow the church's health code, the word of wisdom.
Correct. The fund is explicitly told not to invest a single penny in companies involved in alcohol, caffeinated beverages, tobacco, or gambling.
So you have a fund that won't touch Coca-Cola or Starbucks.
Right.
But it's simultaneously betting billions on volatile AI chips. It's a fascinating contrast.
It is, and they are active traders. We see it all the time in the filings. Recently, they were making big new buys in Capital One and United Health while selling off huge chunks of Home Depot and Thermo Fisher. It's a living, breathing machine.
Which brings us to the core conflict of this whole deep dive. Why does a religious charity need to sit on reserves of this magnitude?
The official line from church leadership is that this is a long-term, rainy day account. They say it's meant to buffer the faith from, catastrophic economic challenges, to protect it from the next 2008.
Okay, but if that's the mission, to be a crisis buffer, then why the decades of secrecy? Why did it take Whistleblower to even bring this to light?
And that raises this really profound ethical question. The head of Ensign Peak, Roger Clark, he gave a very candid and frankly startling explanation for why they kept it secret. He said the leadership feared that public knowledge of the church's massive wealth Well, that it might discourage members from paying tithing.
Wait. So the concern was if they knew we had $60 billion sitting here, they might stop paying the required 10% of their income. That feels like it undermines the whole argument that tithing is purely about spiritual commitment.
Precisely. If faith is tested by knowing the institution is financially secure, that changes the whole dynamic. And what's more, critics point to what happened in the past. When the 2008 recession actually hit, the rainy day they were supposedly saving for, church officials told everyone to trim their budgets. They didn't tap the reserve.
So you didn't even use it.
The fund sat untouched, which really undercuts the whole idea that it's a crisis buffer.
And when you connect this reserve to the church's actual operations, the numbers are just stark. The fund, you said, yields about 7% returns. On $60.9 billion, that's over $4 billion in gains a year.
And their estimated annual budget is roughly $5 billion. So yeah, they could basically cover almost their entire global operation from investment gains alone.
Yet tithing is still required for members to get into the temple, which is, essential for salvation in their faith.
That's the conflict. The question isn't whether they have a right to save. It's whether this level of accumulation is prudence or if it's hoarding, especially when tithing remains a requirement for full participation.
And that tithing brings in how much a year on top of all this?
The church is estimated to collect an astonishing $7 billion a year in tithing from its 17 million members.
Which brings us directly to the whistleblower, the person who pulled back the curtain on this whole thing, David Nielsen.
Yes, Nielsen. He was a former senior portfolio manager at Ensign Peak. He alleged that EPA wasn't a charity at all, but a clandestine hedge fund focused only on growing the bank account.
He filed a complaint with the IRS, right, in 2019.
He did, alleging the firm was misleading the public, its members, everyone. And he pointed to specific instances of what he saw as the misuse of tax-exempt funds.
Like what? What did he claim they were doing?
He cited a couple of big examples. First, directing $1.4 billion toward the church-owned City Creek Center Mall in Salt Lake City.
A shopping mall.
And another $600 million to rescue Beneficial Life, a church-owned insurance company that was in trouble. Nielsen's claim was that using charity funds to prop up for-profit businesses violated their tax-exempt status.
How did the church respond to that?
They pushed back hard. They said the mall money was just an investment that provides returns, and with Beneficial Life, well, they owned it, so they were justified in bailing it out to protect church assets. They maintained they comply with all applicable laws.
But regardless of those specific allegations, Nielsen's complaint exposed something else, something that led to direct regulatory action. The shell companies.
That's the part that really shocked the financial world. The SEC launched a probe after this came out, and their findings were just clear as day. Ensign Peak had created 13 shell companies over nearly 20 years.
13.
13, all to systematically hide about $32 billion in stocks from federal disclosure forms.
That is not a filing error. That sounds deliberate.
Oh, it was. The SEC noted these shell companies had local phone numbers that went straight to voicemail. They only existed on paper.
And the regulatory consequence, the SEC must have come down on them for that.
They did. In February 2025, the SEC fined the church and Ensign Peak $5 million for using false records and statements to hide the portfolio's true size.
$5 million, which, for an organization with these kinds of assets is, well, it's a slap on the wrist.
Many critics said exactly that.
But what was the church's defense for the shell companies? How did they possibly justify that?
Their argument was framed as confidentiality, not secrecy. They said their lawyers advised the structure. And their reason was kind of fascinating. They claimed the shell companies were there to stop ordinary members from seeing what Ensign Peak was trading and then trying to copy them and mismanaging their own money.
So they were protecting their members from themselves.
That was the claim.
Yeah.
To keep the focus on the church's mission, not its money. Which, of course, brings us right back to that core tension.
The wealth versus the spiritual demand.
Exactly. It's where the philosophical critique hits hardest. The church collects that $7 billion a year, often from members who are told that paying tithing is their path out of poverty.
I remember reading a quote from the church's prophet, Russell M. Nelson, who said, "Only paying tithing can get them out of the cycle of poverty." That's a hard statement to hear when you know about this massive undeclared fund.
It's very difficult to reconcile, and it's where critics bring up scripture, funnily enough. One source, retired tax attorney, said this is the modern equivalent of burying talents, which Christ condemned in the parable.
Meaning that wealth is supposed to be put to work, to do good, not just saved in a vault forever.
That's the argument. that saving has to eventually convert into action. And this contrasts directly with the church's position, which is that tithing is about spiritual sacrifice, not about financial need. They do say they're a major charitable donor. They claim they give about $1 billion a year to humanitarian causes.
But that $1 billion figure, that's contested, isn't it?
It is, heavily. Critics point out that the church often includes material assistance and the estimated value of volunteer hours in its accounting, not just cash. One source found that over a 24-year period, the average cash donation was just over $13 million a year. So it's very hard to know how much wealth is actually being distributed.
This has been an incredible deep dive. So, to recap for you, the listener, we have a record high portfolio of $60.9 billion, just the public part, a number that's doubling every 5 years, driven by huge bets on big tech like Nvidia. This wealth is built on the required tithing of 17 million members, yet the fund size was kept secret for decades, using 13 shell companies, which resulted in a $5 million SEC fine.
And that tension is where the story really lives. The whole Ensign Peak case, it highlights this dilemma facing any large, successful nonprofit. So the question for you to consider is this. When a charity or a church achieves this level of massive financial preparation, that ultimate rainy day fund, does it have a corresponding moral obligation to increase its transparency? Or maybe even start distributing that wealth before that necessary prudence crosses the line into what looks like excessive accumulation?